Welcome, everyone. During her 35-plus-year career as a certified financial planner and asset manager, Nancy worked with thousands of individuals, assisting them in the financial aspects of aging, including how to pay for the care they need and preserving the assets they spent their lives building. Nancy also looked after her mother for 12 years, which gave her a greater opportunity to see firsthand many of the challenges of aging, as well as the opportunities to make it the best it can be. Today, Nancy, now a senior herself, is an international speaker, award-winning author, and 3-year delegate to the United Nations for the Commission on the Status of Women. Nancy wrote the award-winning book, Above All Else, Independence, Happiness, and Success in Your Senior Years, to help people take greater control of what their future lives can be as they age. She will show you simple things you can do while your mind is sharp to enable you to potentially maintain your independence longer and live a more fulfilling life. Please welcome Nancy Butler.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you everyone for coming. I think you're going to find this extremely interesting. If it's not information specifically for you, think about it for others around you, for your parents, for your friends, for anyone you think this would apply to, because there's some really good information in here that'll apply to a lot of people in different age groups. And it's not letting me move my slides. There we go. So first thing, let's talk about some people that we know that are older, that are still living wonderful, full lives. So let's see if you can name these people and put it in the chat if you can. The youngest person that I'm going to show you is 90 years old, the youngest. And the oldest is 99 years old, still alive, still doing really well. And they all still have an active life. So you know who this person is, right? If you want to put that in the chat, feel free. You are correct. It's Jimmy Carter, and he is 97 years old right now, and he's still doing really well. Who is this? Dick Van Dyke. He's 95 years old right now and doing really well. In fact, he's still out there on TV. We see him fairly often. Do you recognize this person? She was a little hard for me to recognize at first. And then when I heard the name, it was like, oh yeah, of course. That's Barbara Eden. She's 90 years old now, believe it or not. And we all know this person. Barbara Walters is 92 years old and still very active. Just a couple more. We all love and know this woman. Betty White is 99 years old. She will be 100 in January, in just 2 months, which is really amazing. And I still see her out there in movies. How about this guy? You want to put in the chat? Do you know who he is? You are correct, Deb. It is Clint Eastwood, and he is 91 years old. How about this guy? You're right, Helen. This is Bob Barker. Remember him? 97 years old and still active. Do you know this woman from way back when? In fact, I just saw her maybe 2 or 3 years ago at the Guard Theatre in New London. Do you know who this woman is? Doctor, correct. Dr. Ruth Westheimer, the sex lady. She is 93 years old, believe it or not. And I saw her, like I said, maybe 3 years ago. So she was 90 and still out on stage doing tours. My point with all of this is, it's not how old you are that matters. It's all what's in our heads. And if you think about it, I think we would all agree that in our heads, we're a lot younger than our bodies tell us we are. So it's a matter of while your mind is sharp, what are the things you can do to help you maintain your independence as long as possible, and at the same time have the best quality of life for whatever years you've got left on this earth? And that's what it's really all about. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So it's all about happiness. It's all about quality of life at this point. And regardless of your age, only you can control your own happiness, and only you can control the quality of your life. So we're going to talk about some of the things you can do to control that. First, let me give you my definition of the word retirement, because it may be different than what you're thinking. Some people think that retirement means you're never going to work again, but that's not really what it is. Retirement means that you have your assets and your income working for you properly, that it's throwing off enough income to support you. If you are working, it's because you love what you do, but you can walk off the job at any time because you have enough money coming in without working. That's the retirement you want to strive for. That is what the definition of retirement is. I have that now, so I don't need to be doing what I'm doing. I just love passing on information and helping other people, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But having the right definition of retirement is really important. I have 6 rules of thumb when it comes to finances, and then we're going to stop talking about finances and talk more about other things. My first rule of thumb: the money that you need for the next 5 years should not be in the market. I know right now the market is the best it's ever been in all of history. I mean, when I started in the business, it was 1981, and the market had not reached 2000 yet. So for it to be almost 36,000 now, it's at the best it's ever been in all of history. But if you're going to need to spend that money in the next 5 years, it does not belong in the market, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to be. The market's going to go up and down. Regardless of whether you're 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, or even 100, I don't care how old you are, some of your market money can still be in the market. That's fine. But the money you need in the next 5 years does not belong in the market. It only belongs in savings, money market, CDs, things that are guaranteed. 2, only take the amount of risk you need to accomplish your goals. So remember, I said having some of your money in the market, regardless of your age, is fine. That's true. However, at what degree of risk? So what percentage of your whole portfolio belongs in the market? And even that percentage, how aggressive should you be? Should it be small cap stocks that basically no one's ever heard of and you could make it big or lose it all overnight? Should it all be only in large cap? How aggressive you should be should be determined by how aggressive you need to be. So if the income you have coming in now is comfortable, why take any more risk than you have to just to have more? So I would suggest you only take the amount of risk you need to accomplish your goals, regardless of what the market's doing, good or bad. General rule of thumb for the amount of income you can expect from a properly diversified portfolio and have the money last for the rest of your life. This is really important. So here's what I'm talking about. Let's look at, add up all of your investment money, all your retirement plans, not your cash reserves, take that out, but add up all your retirement plan money, all your investments, even if they're not in retirement plan money. And the question that this is asking is, what is a reasonable amount you can expect to take as income off of those assets and have that money last for the rest of your life? And I'm not talking about necessarily real estate that you would have to sell in order to get any income off of it. I mean, unless you're counting the rental income, then that's fine. But the answer to this question has changed over time, and it will continue to change. Right now, the answer to that question is about 2.5% to 3%. So if you add up all of your assets that provide income or that could provide income, subtract off your cash reserves, what's left? figure about 2.5% to 3% of that amount is what you can expect every year for the rest of your life, regardless of how long you live, without depleting the money before you're gone. It doesn't mean the money won't go down in value. It just means it won't run out before you do. And that's a target you want to watch for. Number 4 of my 6 rules, make sure you have a will, trust, power of attorney, healthcare power. And so do you have them? And it's not only do you have them, but once you have them, you really need to review them with your attorney at least every 3 years, even if nothing's changed. Because even if nothing's changed in your situation, the laws might have changed. And you want to make sure that you're covering everything. So every 3 years or sooner if something's needed, but you need to make sure that you've contacted an attorney. Don't try to do it yourself, and make sure you have a will, trust, power of attorney, and healthcare powers in place. Healthcare power is different than a durable power of attorney. If you do not have a healthcare power, if you became ill and went to the hospital, they will put you on life support and they will keep you on life support. A healthcare power, if this is your wish, let's say there was an accident and by the time your family got to the hospital, you were already on life support because they didn't know. A healthcare power will allow them to take you off of life support. Without that, the durable power of attorney won't work. The durable power of attorney is more for financial assets, but not for your health. So if that's what you want, you need to look into that. Remember, even if your situation has changed, like I said, hasn't changed, the laws may have changed. So you want to make sure that everything you're doing is not out of date. They've also added things that I had never heard of before. And there's new things popping up. They have provisions in wills more now than ever, and even a trust for your pets. So what happens if you needed to go into a nursing home and couldn't take your pets with you, or you were to die? What happens to your pets? I've even seen now where attorneys have set up pet trusts for how the pets are taken care of. The other thing that I've seen a lot of lately that they never had before, which I never would have thought of, but it's very important, is social media. There have been lawsuits because someone has died. Somebody came in and turned off all their Facebook, and the family sued the person that did that because the person that died had posted so many wonderful photos of them and written so many nice things about trips they took and times with the family. And the family wanted to preserve that, but somebody went in and erased it. So they now even put into wills how social media is to be taken care of. So think about what you have in yours and if you need to see someone to have things updated. Number 5, my first goal for you is that you have the income you need to provide the quality of life that you want for the rest of your life. I don't care about what you leave to your kids. I don't care about anybody else. The first thing once you're retired is that you have the income you need for the quality of life that you want for the rest of your years. But number 2, if you have number one, the first goal, and you have some money left over that you can use to preserve the assets you've spent your entire life to build up, so you don't lose them in the last few years, either to long-term care, to illness of any kind, to anything, you want to make sure that you're able to do that too. But if the cost of what you need to do to preserve everything cuts into your quality of life, then I care less about what's left to your children. The money is there for you and for your care. But if you can have it all, I want you to have it all. And there's no reason to let the money go to taxes or long-term care costs or anything else if you can afford to protect it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, on to other things. Here's some more fun things. And a lot of these things I've actually done myself, or I've worked with clients on it. So I'll give you some examples so it'll make more sense. Making great memories, low cost, unique ways to preserve and pass on great memories to your heirs. For people who seem to have everything, there's a low cost way to put happy tears in their eyes. I actually did this for my mother, and I will explain to you. It was her 80th birthday. What do you give to an 80-year-old? I purchased fancy paper. You can get it at like Michael's. I cut it into 4 by 1 inch strips, and it was white on one side with a real pretty print on the other side. I sent 6 of those strips to every family member and friend of hers in the country in an envelope with a note asking them, and I think I had a return address envelope in there too, with a note asking them to write a memory they had of my mother. 1 memory per strip, for them to sign it after they write it, and then return all the strips to me by a certain date so that I had them all before my mother's birthday. Then I went out and purchased a mahogany box, a beautiful box that she could put on her coffee table. And I had engraved on the top on a gold metal plate, "Our memory of you," and attached it to the box. I got back over 100 of those little strips. They all went in the box. I wrapped the box up, took my mother out for dinner, gave her her gift, and she cried her eyes out. It was so neat. Some of the family members she hadn't spoken to in years, some of her friends from long ago that she hasn't seen because she moved away. I mean, people that had memories of her from way back when, and it just meant so much, and it cost almost nothing. Cost the postage stamp, cost the paper, cost the box, and that's about it. So if it's you that needs to get that box, you may want to tell your family about it, but think about it for somebody else. Maybe you have a parent or someone that that could really use that. It's really a nice thing, and it doesn't cost much at all. Here's a totally different thing, and I've also done this, and it worked out really well. It was very important. You, if you're a senior, and actually if you're not, depending on how old you are, have a lifetime of knowledge, wisdom, and history to share. Don't let it die with you. Pass on your family history, wisdom, and memories so your family will have it forever. This can be a memory for you and for your family. So here's what I'm talking about. You know how they have videographers for weddings? Well, I hired a videographer, and then I had my mother, I have a list. They're on my computer. They're also in my last book. I have a list of 150 questions that I printed in big print and gave to my mother and said, go through this list and pick out about a half a dozen questions that you would like to answer on video that you want your family to hear. Write your answers down, give it back to me. I'll put it in the computer so it'll be easy to read, and I'll get rid of all the other questions, and then I'll work with you. I'll give you the printed list of the 6 questions you chose, plus your answers in writing, and give it to you so you can practice it and work on it for a couple of weeks. And then we're going to have a videographer come to your home. We'll get your hair done, your nails done. We'll have a professional makeup artist do your makeup. You're going to get a new outfit. I'm going to buy flowers. We're going to put them in a vase behind you. And then my mother said, this is wonderful. This is great. However, we've got to make sure we have the right things behind me. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, we can't have 2 pictures of your brother and 1 picture of your sister. That's not going to work. So we need to look through everything. And I want 1 picture of your father and 1 picture of you. So everything had to be fair and even for her. So we did that. We made sure the pictures were what she wanted, and the pretty vase and the new outfit and all of that. We hired a videographer You got to be really aware of what it looks like behind her when she's being videoed, she or he, because you can do it with your father or an uncle or an aunt or anyone that has great history that you want to know. And like I said, this is a time they might want to look their best. For my mother, that was really important. For other people, that you might want to just see them the way you always see them. So that's the way you'll remember them. So I asked her, gave her the questions in advance, jotted down her answers. And then when we actually did the video, I sat there in the room with her and I cued her to remind her of what she wanted to say. So I would ask her the question and then I would say, you wanted to talk about this. And she'd say, okay. So then they videoed her answers. They videoed the whole thing. It took about an hour. And then after it was all over, I worked with the videographer to completely take me out to only hear her. So when the video was done, it ended up being maybe a 15-minute video instead of a 1-hour video. And what we did was I made multiple copies, researched the family tree and put that on the cover of the case, put the video inside the case. And that's what everyone got for a holiday gift that year. So the entire family has memories of my mother from back then, and she has still since passed. So we all have that. Here's some of the kind of questions to ask. Let's start at the beginning. What is your earliest memory? Tell me about your parents and your siblings. Tell me about your first kiss. Who was your first love? How did you meet Dad? What attracted you to him? How did he propose to you? I got all of that on tape, things I never heard before. She never talked about any of this, but I got her to talk about this and it's all on video. How did you choose our names? How'd you choose my name, my brother's name? Where did it all come from? What gift did you cherish the most of all the gifts you were given? Do you know what she answered for that? The one I just told you about. She said out of for her entire 80 years, the best gift she ever received was that box with all the notes from all her friends. Tell me about a fond memory of your grandparents. What part has religion played in your life? Now that you're 80 years old, what's the best part of being your age? If you had your life to live over, what's the one thing you would have done differently? Is there something you always wanted to do but didn't? What do you want to be most remembered for? Again, the complete list of 150 questions are in the book, and you'll hear more about that later. But just a wonderful thing. Like I said, my mother passed several years ago now. We all still have that video, can watch it whenever we want. I learned things I never would have known had I not done that. Now let's talk a little bit about maintaining quality of life as you age. Things you can do today to help maintain your independence longer. What can you do now to enable you to maintain your independence longer? We all have seen this in others or are feeling it in ourselves, that as we get older, change becomes more and more difficult. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, our memories might not be as good as they were before. And if we leave everything the way it is, we're going to remember this is where this is, this is where this is. If we start changing things up, it's going to be a little tougher. The other reason is physically, it may be harder for us to do things, and we've gotten used to the way they are. But for whatever the reason is, you will never be younger than you are today. And today is the time for you to start getting all your ducks in a row so that you can maintain your independence as long as possible. And here's some of the things you can do. So how are you going to make life easier for the long term? Simplify, simplify, simplify. We're going to talk about how to do that. So some of the ways you can simplify are, gotta put it up here. What I call autopilot. I put together a program probably 30 years ago or 25 years ago that I used with a lot of my clients. When I sold my practice, I had about 1,200 clients and over half of them were over the age of 65. I don't practice anymore, so I'm not trying to sell you anything because I'm not even in that business now. But what I'm trying to tell you is there's a lot of things you can do, and autopilot was something that I set up where I helped people put as many things as possible on in an automatic way so they didn't have to have their hands on it. Because if you have to have your hands on it, then you have to remember how to do it. You have to remember to do it. And it just is that much more to keep in your head. And I'd rather your head was freed up for you to have fun and do the things you want and not have to worry about all this other stuff. Autopilot means things will run on their own in the way you need them to, with little to no work or input on your part. And I'm going to talk to you about a few of those things. Too many financial relationships. So we've all heard, don't put all your money in one basket, which is true, but you don't have to have 50 million different accounts. Right now, most people do have the ability to consolidate their accounts without even selling anything. So for example, if you have stock at 3 different brokerage firms, or if you have stock certificates, which by the way, you should never, ever hold a stock certificate. Do you know that if you hold a stock certificate, there's no way to put a beneficiary on it? It has to be deposited into an account and the account has the beneficiary on it. So don't hold stock certificates and you run the risk of losing them. If you have dividend reinvestment accounts all over the place, there's no need for that. Most companies that can hold your stock, you can transfer the dividend reinvestment accounts to them and they can do the dividend reinvestment for you, still free of charge, the same way you were getting it before. You'll want to check on all of that, but most companies now can do that. So the more relationships you have, the more you have to keep track of, the more financial statements you get, the more confirmations of every little thing, the more proxies, the more prospectuses, and at tax time, the more companies you have to keep track of and make sure you get all that information. If you keep what you have, if that's what you want to do, but consolidate it to 1 or 2 different brokerage firms or 1 or 2 different banks, then you'll only have those couple of places to deal with. It'll make your life easier, but just as important, when you need your family or somebody else later on to come in and help you, it'll make their life a lot easier. Clean up small accounts. If you do have stock, they may have split over time. So you might have only 30 shares of this or $1,000 of that because, and you didn't even buy it. It's that it's split up. Clean up all that little stuff. It's a nightmare to deal with later on. And the older you get, the more difficult it's going to be to deal with it. Companies were never required until a few years ago to keep track of cost basis. You have to keep track of cost basis. So clean this stuff up now while you have the ability to deal with it, because as you get older, it's going to be tougher. Direct payment of bills. A lot of firms, including your bank and your brokerage firm, can now offer, a lot of them now offer direct payment of bills. My mother actually had a great idea, and this is how we handled hers, because I handled her money for years while I was looking after her. But she was pretty frugal, and she loved getting the points on her credit cards, but she didn't want to pay any interest. So she had told me what I want to do is I want to have all my bills then. If you're going to make me get my bills paid automatic and they're not going to come to the house and I'm not going to write a check anymore, is there any way we can put them on the credit card? And I said, that's a great idea. Of course we can. Because she knew any dollars that were charged on her credit card, she got points for. So we put all the bills that we could, which was all but maybe 2 or 3. Some of the medical bills you can't put on a credit card as an automatic payment. But most of her other automatic payments like telephone, cell phone, electric bills, all those kinds of things, you can put on that. So what happened was all those bills were paid directly on her credit card. And then once a month, her credit card pulled the payment from her checking account. So she didn't even have to write the bill for her credit card. It was my job, and it would be your job, unless you had somebody else to do it for you, to make sure that there was always enough money in that checking account to cover that. So I knew about how much her expenses were a month, and I made sure we always had at least 4 or 5 months in that account. And that way, about every 3 months, I would double check, make sure she's good. So once every 3 months, I would look at it, make sure she had the right amount of money in there. She didn't have to worry about it. I didn't have to worry about it. She got all her points. On the holidays in December, she used those points to get gifts for all the family. That's why she wanted those points, because most of the points, most of the gifts didn't even have to come out of her pocket. It all was paid for with points. So think about consolidating things so you don't have to deal with them. Quarterly estimated federal or state income tax payments. I never allowed my retired clients, if it was possible, to pay quarterly estimated taxes. And here's how you do it and why. I didn't want them to have to 4 times a year remember how much they owed, where they mail the check, how much is postage. And if they forget, there's penalties for not paying on time. So again, to set them up on autopilot so it happened automatically, we would work with their accountant or their tax advisor to have the right amount taken out of their pension, Social Security, their withdrawals from their IRAs or their 401k plans, so that when tax time came, they came as close to breaking even as possible and were not required to pay quarterly estimated tax. Every year when they had their income tax done, we would have the tax advisor rework it and make sure we were still on track and the amounts deducted were correct and we need to increase it or decrease it. But that way they never had to file quarterly income tax payments, and it was always paid on time without worrying about whether it was going to be late and have a penalty. Cost basis. I alluded to this just a little bit ago about that. Up until a few years ago, no company was required to ever keep your cost basis. And what cost basis is any money that can appreciate in value, or any investment, I should say, that can appreciate in value that is not in a retirement plan. It's your job, it was your job to keep track of how much you paid into it, all of the reinvested dividends, all the reinvested capital gains, because that's the money when you sell that investment that you don't pay tax on. And if you can't prove it, then you are going to pay tax on it. And it's a royal nightmare. So cost basis now, while your mind is sharp, you need to start working on making sure you have in writing with your tax advisor or with yourself, but I would suggest more with your tax advisor, exactly what the cost basis is on all of your investments up to at least up till the date that the government now requires that the investment firms keep track. But up until that date, they didn't. So here's an example. My mother was living out of state, and when things got really bad with her husband, and I moved them up here, I needed to buy a place for my mother to live. That meant selling some investments. Well, her husband always managed everything until he got Alzheimer's and he couldn't deal with it anymore, which is why we were moving them up here. But as we did that, and I took over his books and we're looking at all of his records, because he spent hours every day working on that stuff, I realized that for about the last 4 or 5 years, he didn't know what he was doing and he was writing everything wrong. And it made absolutely no sense. He had already had dementia earlier than we even thought. So when I got my mother up here and we went to sell some of those assets, there was no way I could figure out what the cost basis was. You would think we could go back to where the investments were held and they would help us, but we couldn't. He got to a point where he didn't trust anyone, so he closed all the accounts and he was physically carrying around all the certificates for everything. And because we had no accounts with them anymore, they wouldn't even talk to us. So it was a nightmare. While you can, you need to work with your financial advisor and your tax advisor to make sure you have cost basis on all of the investments that are not in your retirement plan, so that if the time comes that you want or need to use that money, everything you need is there. Because the older you get, the harder it's going to be to deal with that. And again, if your family needs to step in and help like I did, you're putting all of that work on them, and that's not fair. Credit cards and charge cards. I don't know how many you have, but you probably don't need more than one or two. If you have more than that, get rid of them. Close out pay off the balances, cut the cards up, get rid of them. It's similar to what I was saying about your financial accounts. You know, how many statements do you need? How many credit cards do you need? Find one or two that work for you, that have a good rate on them, or no annual fees or points, whatever it is you like. Cut up and get rid of the rest. Try to simplify your finances, making managing your assets moving forward more easy. The easier it is, the more of this you do now to make your life easier, the longer you'll be able to maintain your independence. Because if you start messing up on this stuff, somebody else is going to have to step in and help you. Medical information. Although medical technology has gotten a lot better, you've noticed when you go to the doctors now, everything is in the computer. I know with my doctor, they even print out everything we just did and hand me a printout before I even leave the office. You can go online and look everything up. So it is starting to get easier, but it's not quite there yet. So what I am suggesting, you should keep in your wallet, and I have one. I started this when I started to take care of my mother. So I had one in my wallet in my pocketbook for my mother, one for me and one for my husband. Now I have just one for me and one for my husband. I keep a list on the computer of everything we're allergic to, all the illnesses that we've had in the past, everything your doctors ask you all the time, medications I'm on and how much of each and how often you take them, what the insurance company, which insurance companies we use, what the card numbers are or our member numbers are, who my emergency contacts are, who are all my doctors, you know, eye doctor, ear doctor, general practitioner, whatever. All of that is in writing, and I keep it printed with the date on the top so that if I ever make a change to it, I change the date. That way I always know I've got the most current. And if something happened to my husband, which it did, he fell, I had to take him to the emergency room. He needed to be treated. And when they start asking all these questions, I can just pull out the list and say, here, this is everything about him that you need to know. So until that happens, start keeping a list in your wallet. It'll be really helpful, especially if you travel or go anywhere, to have that with you at all times. There's another way to do some of this, but it won't do everything for you. There's an app, if you have a smartphone, that's called Med Tracker. And there are other apps as well. So you'll want to check out the different ones and see what you like. But it allows you to actually put your medication in this tracker. And that way, when you get to the doctor's office and they ask you, well, what are you on and how much do you take? You just take out your phone and show it to them. So you don't have to remember everything. Another thing to consider, everybody pretty much knows they should do this, but very rarely do people actually do this. And this is protection of your personal property. So you have homeowners insurance, or if you're renting, you have renter's insurance, I would expect. But do you have an inventory of everything? And I tend to talk about this more maybe than others because I've needed it twice. The first time I needed it, I left in the morning, excuse me, with my kids. When I opened the place I was in was on cement. And when I opened the front door, the water was almost 4 feet high. It knocked me over, ran down the road. And apparently what had happened was right after I left in the morning, the hose on the back of the washing machine broke. And the place was sealed so tight that the water just kept rising. Well, let me ask you this. What do you think things would be worth, or the insurance company would say things would be worth, or could you even prove what it was you had if it had been floating in water for 12 hours? I mean, what does it even look like? How can you prove what it was and what it was worth? So insurance company would come in and say, well, that's a 20-year-old rug, or that's a whatever, here's what it's worth. So what you want to do, and this is the simplest way I can think of, Most people have access to a video recorder. If you don't, you might be able to rent one or borrow one from a friend. And what you want to do is, before you ever start it, take out all your jewelry and valuables and lay them out on your table. Then start outside your front door and say, today's date is, and say the date. This is the home of, with your name. Our address is, with the address. And then as you open the front door, start talking about everything. Most people don't do this inventory because they don't want to write it all down. It's a pain in the neck. But most people don't mind talking. So when you walk in the front door and you see the painting on the wall, you'll say, this painting was given to me by grandma so-and-so. And then you'll turn it over and it says on the back, signed, dated 1894. Grandma told me it came from here, and anything you can think of that you can talk about that would make it easier for a company to be able to value that item. When you get to the room where you put everything out on the table, pick up the watch, video the back. It says, Dear Honey, 1985. The front says Rolex. We bought this in such and such a date, estimate its value at this, put it down, go to the next piece, and start talking about everything. When you get to items that have a serial number on them, like your television or your computer, pull them out, video the serial number, model number. Then when you're done with all of this, don't keep the video at home. If your place goes up in flames, or if you have the flood like I just talked about, what good is the video if it's in your house? Keep it at somebody else's house, keep it in a safe deposit box, but don't keep it in your home. Then what's important is, if you ever had a theft, somebody broke into your house, you can give the video to the police. They have the model number, serial number of all of your stuff. So it's easier for them to find it if it's your things that they're finding. It's easier to track it down, very important. And if you have a problem, you can give it to your insurance company because you'll have proof of what it looked like before. Very important. The second time I needed it, we built a house in Orange, Connecticut from scratch. Beautiful house, best house I ever had. And about 6 months after we moved in, it burst into flames. They had the living room burst into flames. They had built the fireplace wrong, and the flames got up behind the inside the fireplace, caught the header on fire, and the whole wall burst into flames. Well, when there's a pile of ashes sitting on the floor, how can you prove to the insurance company what that pile of ashes used to be? I mean, we'd only been there 6 months. Was it an old cardboard box? Was it a chair that was my grandmother's that was hundreds of years old and worth a ton of money? I mean, so you've got to have some kind of records. And then if you do replace an item, you don't have to redo the whole video. Start at the end of the video, say today's date is, television, model number, serial number, whatever, isn't here anymore. Here's the new one. And then just add it to the end and keep your records up to date that way. Very important, not all that hard to do. I know it's a pain in the neck, but it can be very, very important. Make changes now to make it easier and more comfortable to be able to stay in your home as you age. I'm hoping your home is not as messy as this. This clutter is ridiculous. And what you need to do is declutter your home or apartment now, and don't have it be such a big task. Start with one closet or one cabinet, and once a week or once every other week, set out a goal of what it is you're going to thin out. Because I think about it again, when I moved my mother up here, my father died at the age of 50. And then my mother remarried about 10 years later and moved to New Jersey. And so I was dealing with all of this out of New Jersey. And when I tried to move them up here, he had saved everything. When his mother died, the place that they lived in had a storage area in the basement. They were in an apartment, and it had like maybe 8 apartments in one building, but one big room in the basement for everybody, except he took up the entire basement. When his mother died, he pulled all her furniture, all her stuff in there. When his sister died, he pulled all her stuff in there. As he was getting older, all of his stuff went down there. They had a 2-car garage where every time somebody moved out, he pulled in the dressers that they left behind, lined up 3 walls of the garage, and then on top of those, 3 more, and every single drawer was filled. That's what I had to deal with. Once I dealt with all of that, I said, I will never put my kids through this. Start cleaning things out now for 2 reasons, maybe even more. First, don't leave that mess for your kids. But more important, when it comes time that you may have to downsize or you may need an assisted living facility or whatever, you want it to be you that decides what's important to you and what you want to keep. So think about what I was saying about my mother's husband. He wasn't my father. I didn't know that much about him. I didn't know what he liked. And yet this apartment was his. And all of those things pretty much were his. But I didn't know what was important to him and what wasn't. So I didn't know, and I knew we couldn't take probably 2/3 of it with us. So what 2/3 do I sell? What third is important to him that I keep? So he has it around him and things that are meaningful to him. I had no clue. Even my mother had no clue. So by you doing this, you get to pick what's important to you to keep and get rid of the things that are not that important. Take it room by room. Also, my email will be up at the end. If you want to email me, when we moved into this house that I'm in now, we have 1,000 square feet of storage downstairs, believe it or not, but I'm extremely organized. But I realized it was starting to get out of hand. And I hired someone to come in and help us go through it all. And she was amazing. And she's not the only one out there. There's many companies out there, but in one day, we cleared out more than half of that space. And I was the one, and my husband was the one that decided what to keep and what to go. And she helped organize it to what should be thrown away, what could be donated that we should get a receipt for so we could take it off on our taxes, and what things should be sold because they're too expensive to just give away, and what things we should keep aside and let the family look at them first before we do anything because they might want them. And she was really great in helping us do that. So pick a drawer, pick a closet, pick a desk, pick something and start so that every single room within a 6-month period or a year, if you have to, gets all cleaned out. So the only thing you have there are the things that are important to you and the things that you use on a regular basis. And then once you do it all, quarterly, go back and look at them again, because we tend to collect things. Also, this applies to your medication and stored food. At least quarterly, you should look at every prescription bottle or jar or tube you have in your house. And if they all have expiration dates on them. And if they've expired, get rid of them. The police departments locally, and you can call the health department if you're not sure, but I know our police department has a drop box for you to drop any outdated medications so it doesn't get in the wrong hands. So make sure you dispose of it properly, but you do not want out-of-date medications in your house, and you do not want out-of-date canned foods or anything in your refrigerator or even boxes anywhere. And if you get the habit of doing it, remember I said, as we get older, change becomes more difficult. If you get in the habit of doing this now on a regular basis, it'll stick with you. And you won't have as much of a chance of taking the wrong medication because you pulled the wrong bottle. Make sure you only have the right stuff in your house and that they're all up to date. Technology can be amazing if you're willing to learn it. And some people want to and some people don't. And I'm not saying you have to. It's all up to you. It's all about quality of life. All I'm saying is there is some technology out there that can improve your quality of life. So by the time my mother was in the last couple of years of life, she could hardly see and she was hard of hearing. and she was in an assisted living facility. We bought her an iPad and put Skype on it for her. Skype is like Zoom, like we're doing now. Put Skype on it for her and set up all of the family in the country, her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren in the country with a Skype account because it was free. And then instead of putting their name for, like I'm seeing your names here because you're not showing your picture, we made sure their pictures showed up, and the pictures were big enough, and we had the iPad on a stand so she didn't even have to hold it, right next to the recliner that was her favorite chair that she sat in all the time. She could pull it up to her face, push the person's face, and it would ring them and they would come up live if they were available. So she could see and talk to her family anytime she wanted to without even getting out of her chair. Another thing I put on the iPad was I went through all of our old family photos and all the way up to now, some of the great things we've done together, cruises we took or trips we took. And there's a place on the iPad to put photos, and I put all those photos on there for her. So if there was nothing good on TV, she would pull it over and just swipe through and look at all the photos, big smiles on her face. A lot of things you can do with technology. And if you have a smartphone, I'm going to give you some quick tips on some of the sites that could really help you with that. A lot of people are doing texting now. If you're not, you might want to learn it. It is pretty simple once you know how. Getting in the swing of it can be a problem, but once you get in the swing of it, then it's pretty simple. And you can send and receive photos that way. And it's funny. My husband always had the old flip phone, and I'm really into technology and he's not. So I used to say, I have a smartphone, you have a stupid phone. And one day he finally decided he didn't want a stupid phone anymore. He wanted a smartphone too. Well, he's gotten to the point now, because of the phone he has, which most of us can do, he knows to push a button and ask the phone anything he wants to know. So if I said to him, what's the weather going to be tomorrow? He'll say, wait a minute, I'll ask my phone. And he'll go ask the phone, what's the weather going to be in Waterford, Connecticut, which is where I am tomorrow. And it'll tell him. Or if he wants to know anything, he just asks the phone first. And he doesn't even have to plug it in or know how to type or have big fingers or where to go. He just asks the phone, and it's amazing. So if you get used to that, it can be really helpful. Here's a few apps that might help you. Identity theft protection is really important. There's an Rfid blocking. And here's what I'm talking about with that. You can buy these little cards. I'm going to show you one because I have them here. They only cost like $2, but you know, people nowadays can do almost anything when it comes to theft. And this is like a little card that I keep my credit card in. But this little packet is RFID protection. And what that means is if you don't have RFID protection, somebody can walk past you, have electronic device under their coat, and they can read what's inside your wallet. They can read what's inside your pocketbook, and they can steal credit card information. And I actually had it happen to me before. In fact, they did it, and within 24 hours, they charged $16,000 on my card. And I had my card. They didn't even steal my card. They just got the information off it. So now everything, in fact, this entire pocketbook is RFID. We're going to be traveling overseas soon, and everything will go in this pocketbook because the entire pocketbook is RFID. So here's a couple of websites you can go to, or actually a type of RFID blocking. And if you go to AAA, the actual AAA office, or even to their website, they sell a lot of RFID things that you can purchase to help you with identity theft. Keyring, you know how we all have, or a lot of people have, those little cards for every store, pretty much, Stop and Shop, ShopRite, CVS. They give you these little cards with your number on it. Well, I don't have any of those anymore. I use Keyring, and I've been using it probably for 10 years or more. And what you do is you swipe the barcode with your phone into this Keyring app, and it saves them all for you. So now when I get to the register, all I do is pull up Stop and Shop, show them my phone. It's got the card on it. They use their swiper and they swipe it, and I never have to carry any of those little tags anymore. Good RX, I'm sure you've heard all the ads on TV. Good way to be able to reduce costs for prescriptions. Find My iPhone. It's a way, if your phone is lost or stolen, that they can locate where your phone actually is. Go to your apps, and if you don't have it on your phone already, and you can plug into the app, I want a magnifying glass with a light. I have it on my phone, and then anytime we're out, if it's dark at the restaurant, you can just use your phone as a magnifying glass with a light to be able to read any menu or see anything you want to see. It's been really good. And I also have a flashlight on my phone, so if we're in a dark area, I use my phone to be able to see where I'm going. Anchor Pointer Compass GPS is an app that'll give you directions. I am good at a lot of things, but I have no sense of direction. And sometimes I will park a car, go into a store, and can't remember which door to come out of to find my car. But if I get out the right door, if you plug this, now I know a lot of cars, you can plug your phone, your keys, and the car will go off so you can find it, but not if it's too far away. What this does is it'll track where you left the phone, where you left your car. And if you go on that app, it'll tell you directions on how to get back to your car. It shows you a map and directions on how to get back to your car so you won't be lost, which is, I think, amazing for somebody like me. Pedometer, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars for one of those trackers for your steps. I have this on my phone, and as long as the phone is on me, it tracks all, if you have 10,000 steps a day or how many steps you actually have. Life 360, this can be very important as you get older, or if you have an older family member. It's free. My husband and I have had it for years. Until COVID, I traveled overseas a lot, and I traveled a lot for work. He always knew where I was, even when I was overseas. We have our pictures there, and it tells us where each person is at any given time. And it's very easy to find someone. I think about people as they get older with dementia and they wander. If this was in their pocket, you would know exactly where they're going. And it's amazing. Or if somebody is injured, say in a car accident or whatever, you would know where the car is to go help them. It's amazing. Med Tracker, it helps you manage your medications and your health information, similar to that paper I was telling you to put in your wallet or pocketbook. Home Sweet Home, we're getting near the end, and I've got so much more I want to talk about, so I'm going to try to get through this quickly. What condition is your home in now? Does it need repair? Will it need repair in the next 20 years? Can you maintain it on your own today, as well as 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Think about that. Because if you think in 10 or 20 years, you're not going to be able to manage this house, start thinking now about what you need to do different to help yourself. If you could no longer manage stairs, would you be able to live in your current house comfortably? Those are important questions you need to ask. Is it possible to put in a ramp so you could stay in that house? Or is the layout of the house not allowing that and you would have to move somewhere else? Think about installing grab bars. When, let's see, in 2007, we built the house we're in now and we moved. And that was right around when I was still looking after my mother. And when seeing all the challenges that she had when we built this house, we designed it to be able to be here forever. So grab bars, I mean, when you look at inside our house, it does not look like the home of an older person. You would never know, but things are there. There are grab bars in the bathroom, in the shower. Appliances, the person who decided the knobs should be on the front of a stove, shouldn't be on the front of the stove, excuse me, and put them up on the back is so that small children won't turn them on and hurt themselves. Most seniors don't have small children in the house, or if they do, their parents are there to watch after them. Knobs on the back of your stove are terrible because if there was a fire or if you even needed to turn the burner off, you have to reach over the burner to turn it off. And if you have a bathrobe or something hanging, so many seniors are burnt or really hurt badly because the knobs are on the back of their stove. So when we got this stove, all our knobs are on the front, and you need to think about that. Also, as you know, faucets and doorknobs, levers can be a lot easier to work than knobs. As you get older, your hands can have arthritis, and it doesn't cost a whole lot just to change your levers in your house. If you start having any issues at all, or even if you have none, or if you're going to be remodeling it all, think about these things and how you can make your life easier. Carpet padding is important. If you have carpet, make sure the padding is thick. And if you're going to replace it, put really thick padding down. So as you get older, if you fall, you'll be less apt to get hurt. Address it now while you still can. Don't wait till it's a problem, because then it's too late. It's almost like I relate it to the doctor told you you have 6 months to live, so you want to go out and buy life insurance. Well, nobody will sell it to you if you already have been declared that you're going to die. It's the same thing with this. You don't wait until you need it. It's too late, because you're not going to be able to manage the change of everything. It's going to be very difficult, and difficult to just get around and deal with how everything has changed in your environment. So have you be the one that makes the changes. If you are no longer able to live in your current home, where do you want to live? Have you thought about that? If a different location would be safer and or better for you, address it now while you're able to decide. That's why we moved in 2007. The house we were in was the best house we ever had, and we loved it. But we realized it was not a house we could live in as we got older. It was on 3 floors. There was no way to get in the house without stairs. So that's when we sold it, even though we absolutely loved it. It was our best home ever. And we moved to this house. And we love this house now too. But now we know we can be here for the rest of our lives. And our family isn't going to have to deal with it. All of these strategies can help in the ongoing management of your finances and enable you to have a better long-term quality of life. This may be especially helpful, like I've said several times, if someone else, like a family member, needs to step in and assist you in the future. Now let's talk about having fun and taking calculated risk. And notice I underlined calculated, which is really important. What excites you? What have you always wanted to do, but you just haven't done it yet? What fear would you like to overcome? I mean, are you afraid of spiders or snakes or something? And what fear do you want to overcome? Fear of flying. Who should you make up with? Life's too short to be miserable or upset with someone for the rest of your life. Who, if it was you at the end of your life, would you say to yourself, I'm so sorry I never made up with that person? Or if they passed, who have you lost touch with and need to reconnect with? Maybe somebody from school or an old love or whatever. Do it now. What are you waiting for? Maybe not the new love if you're married. I mean, your old love if you're married, but you know what I'm talking about. And what's on your bucket list? I have a bucket list, and I started checking them off. And then I started thinking about it. Gee, my bucket list is almost done. When it's finished, am I supposed to die? Well, no, I'll add more things to my bucket list. So how can you make a difference? Now that if you are retired and as you get older, now's time to be able to give back. Maybe what you would love to do, find what's fun for you and what you enjoy. Tutor children and or adults, seniors helping senior programs is something. Daycare for single working parents, animal volunteer program if you really like animals, stuff envelopes for a charity, check with AARP. They have a whole list of things you can do. Right now, I just finished about 12 hours of training. I've got about another 15 or 20. I am applying for guardian ad litem. If you have not heard of that, it's not a paid position, but I am going to be a voice in court for children from newborn to age 18 that are currently either in foster care or in abusive homes. And I will be evaluating their case and make recommendation to the court on where they should be placed and what programs or help they need. And to me, that's just giving back, and it's going to make me feel great. And that's at any age, and I'm in my 70s. Helping build houses with Habitat for Humanity. That's me. I did help build a house. That's me and my mom. We used to dress as clowns and do parades at nursing, be in parades and go to nursing homes to put smiles on people's faces. So think out of the box. What is it you can do? Encourage others to step out of their comfort zone. That's my granddaughter and I. She was scared to death, but I got her to go in the water with a beluga whale at the Mystic Aquarium. After we were done, she loved it. Next, I watched my grandkids twice a week and 4 weeks in the summer for 20 years. And so I knew them well. And I said, we're going to do something and just make sure you're free from this time to this time. I'm picking you up and here's when you'll be home. And I'm not going to tell you what we're doing. So I picked them up. They got in the car. We drove to Mystic. When they got out of the car, I immediately locked it so they couldn't get back in because I knew they would get back in and not want to go. But I got them to go on segways all through downtown Mystic. And when they first saw it, they said, I'm not doing that. And I said, well, I'm not going to force you to do something you don't want to do, but here's what you do have to do. They require 20 minutes of practice in this parking lot. You are going to do that 20 minutes of practice. If after the 20 minutes you don't like it and you don't want to do it, I'm not going to force you. But after the 20 minutes, I think you're going to like it. After the 20 minutes, we were on those segways for an hour and a half. They didn't want to get off. They absolutely loved it. So try to help others also have a wonderful life. I said to I'm very adventurous. I said to my husband a couple of years ago, it's time again. And he said, oh no, now what? I said, we're going to learn how to fly a helicopter. We're going to learn how to fly a plane, or we're going to drive real race cars at a NASCAR track. You get to pick. What do you want to do? What do you think he picked? That's him and I in New Hampshire at a NASCAR track 3 days before NASCAR. He was scared out of his mind. He didn't want to go. Finally, I got him to get in that darn car. He ended up driving faster than me, and he absolutely loved it. Push yourself reasonably. Don't be afraid. If you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? Just a couple more quick things, and we'll take questions real fast because we don't have a lot of time left. It was always on my bucket list that someday I will go on an African safari. My husband and I go to charity auctions all the time. They had one at the charity auction. He said, I don't want to go. It's too far. I called my daughter. I said, if your mother wins this auction, do you want to go with her? She said, yes. She and I were on an African safari on her 40th birthday. And while we were on the safari, they told me the cheetah just ate. And if I wanted to get out, I could lay down and pet him. And this was out in the jungle in South Africa. You only live once. I've said this to a lot of people before, and you may agree or disagree, but I'd rather die having fun than sitting home worrying about everything all the time. Last thing, before we left, my daughter said, only one thing that's on her bucket list that you can only do in South Africa, would I do it with her? And I said, you know me, I'll try just about anything. If you've watched Shark Week on TV, we flew to where they filmed Shark Week. That's me in the cage doing a shark cage dive where they filmed Shark Week. I had an underwater camera and took a picture of him just as they were lowering me into the water. At first, we were scared to death. I ended up loving it so much. I was the only one on the ship that went down twice. I'm not telling you you need to do any of this. I'm saying find what excites you and don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. When you're at the end of your life looking back, how are you going to feel about the life you led, what you accomplished, and how you treated others? If you can feel good about those three things, you've had a wonderful life. And that's really what matters. So while I've got this screen up, let's take a couple of questions. I know we're really over time right now. Christina, any questions?
Let's see, we have someone asked, what if I have always had a desire to have a cottage as a getaway place, but it doesn't make sense financially?
Then instead of having it, you need to be able to go there. What if you could, here's a perfect example. My mother always wanted to live in Florida and never ended up being able to have a house and live in Florida. So after her husband died, she went to Florida for 3 months every winter. And she rented a condo and had a wonderful time. If you can't financially buy it, you could rent it and make that. And I would think that would make more sense anyway, because as we get older, if you have property that you own outside of the state, it makes settling your state a lot harder. And you're tied to that property as far as any maintenance or other problems. If you rent it, you can go whenever you want, typically, you know, find a place that's good. And I would say I would still go, I would do that, but I would rent one and I wouldn't buy it. So I don't think I see any other questions. Am I missing anything, Christina?
So.
Or is that all the
I don't
questions?
see anything yet.
Pardon me?
I don't see anything, no.
Okay, so I hope you found this informative, enjoyable. I hope you got something out of it. I do have a website, and if you email me, what was I forget what I was going to send you, but there was something I would send you if you emailed me. Also, if the book on the bottom, Above All Else, Independence, Happiness, and Success, it's a small book. It's a real quick, easy read. All the things I talked about here are in the book plus more, and all those 150 questions are in there also. So there's my email if you want to contact me. There's the website if you want to buy it directly. And for the next 3 days, if you're interested in all 3 books, they might make a good holiday gift. There's a special to buy 3, you'll get a discount over the individual price, which is all listed here. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got a lot out of it. And I've really enjoyed passing this information on to you. And hopefully it'll help you have an even better life. And that's my goal for you.
Thank you so much. This was great. I don't know if you could see the comments. Everyone says thank you and really good tips. You can read them. It was awesome. Thank you, Nancy.
All righty. Thanks a lot.
Airplane mode. Eventually loses connection.